In 1803, Ludwig van Beethoven sat at his piano and composed his Third Symphony. He dedicated the entire piece to Napoleon Bonaparte, a man he viewed as a hero, the fierce defender of democratic ideals who was actively dismantling the oppressive monarchies of Europe. A year later, news reached Beethoven that his idol had placed a crown on his own head, declaring himself the absolute king of France. Beethoven was furious. He violently scratched Napoleon's name off the title page of the symphony, declaring that the man he once admired was merely a tyrant susceptible to the lure of power. This is the core paradox of Napoleon's life. He began his journey as an alienated boy born on the island of Corsica, harboring a deep hatred for the French colonizers who occupied his homeland. By his mid-30s, he had become the absolute ruler of the very nation he once despised. His life leaves historians wrestling with a massive contradiction. We have to look at how a military liberator, championed by the French Revolution, manipulated his way into becoming its absolute dictator. Napoleon's ascent was incredibly rapid. He distinguished himself through tactical brilliance at Toulon and rapid surprise maneuvers at Arcole. By the age of 24, he had already secured the rank of general in the French army. When he marched his troops into Italy, he didn't present them as conquerors. He declared to the Italian people that the French army arrived solely to break the chains of the local kings and emperors who had oppressed them for decades. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign involved 40,000 soldiers and a specialized contingent of over 160 scientists, scholars, and artists. Their mission was to systematically study the region and promote Enlightenment ideals. The campaign resulted in a monumental discovery. His team unearthed the Rosetta Stone. This artifact featured the same message in 3 different scripts, providing the linguistic cross-reference that allowed historians to finally translate ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. While the campaign was a scientific triumph, it was a military disaster. The British Navy decimated the French fleet, trapping the army and forcing Napoleon to find a way to salvage his reputation. In August 1799, Napoleon secretly abandoned his stranded army in Egypt and sailed back to France. Despite the defeat, the French public welcomed him as a hero. This reception was the result of a meticulously engineered deception. Napoleon took control of the French press, systematically printing exaggerated accounts of his battlefield heroics, while actively shutting down any dissenting publications. You can see this physical manipulation in the art he commissioned. While famous propaganda paintings showed him gallantly charging across the Alps on a majestic white horse, the reality of his military movements was far less glamorous. He actually crossed the freezing mountains on a mule, guided by a local farmer. Napoleon used mass propaganda to manufacture an invincible public persona and secure his hold on power, proving his influence reached far beyond the battlefield. By November 1799, Napoleon capitalized on his popularity to orchestrate a political coup. He ousted the existing government and established himself as the first consul, a position granting him near absolute authority over the state. This chart shows the official results of the public referendums Napoleon used to legitimize his power. His administration announced that 3 million citizens, an impossible 99.9% of voters, supported the new constitution. In reality, the referendum was fraudulent. The true count was closer to 1.5 million votes. In 1804, he finalized his rise by crowning himself Emperor of France. He then conquered neighboring territories, installing his own brothers as puppet kings in Spain, Holland, and parts of modern-day Germany. Domestically, his rule was regressive. He enacted laws that reinstated slavery in French colonies and stripped women of the political rights they gained during the Revolution, including the right to divorce. Through fraudulent elections and the suppression of civil liberties, Napoleon replaced the democratic promise of the Revolution with absolute personal power. That unchecked hunger for power led to a fatal miscalculation in 1812, the invasion of Russia. But the Russian forces refused to meet him in a traditional battle. They retreated, setting fire to their own land, and leaving the French troops to starve in the freezing winter. In response, a massive coalition of European monarchs united against him. They dealt a staggering blow to his decimated army at the Battle of Leipzig, forcing Napoleon to surrender and accept exile to the island of Elba. He didn't stay there long. In 1815, he made a dramatic 100-day return to power, but his resurgence ended permanently with a final military collapse at the Battle of Waterloo. This time, his enemies took no chances. Napoleon was permanently banished to St. Helena, an inescapable island in the South Atlantic, where he lived out his final 6 years in total isolation. His refusal to share control destroyed the empire he spent his adult life fighting to build. And yet, while his physical empire was dismantled by his rivals, the civic and administrative frameworks he engineered outlasted his reign. In 1804, he introduced the Napoleonic Code. This legal framework permanently enshrined equality for all male citizens and formally ended the practice of European feudalism. Beyond the courts, he created the Bank of France to control inflation, rolled out a uniform tax system for all citizens, and built a centralized, secularized network of public schools and universities. Napoleon Bonaparte remains difficult to categorize. He was a power-obsessed dictator whose wars left millions dead, yet his administrative reforms provided the legal and civic bedrock for modern Western society.